There's a quiet power in the INFJ silence. To most, it looks calm. To others, it might seem distant. But to those paying close attention, it's a signal of something far more intentional. INFJs often outthink those around them, not by speaking over them, but by listening deeply, observing fully, and then speaking only when their words matter most. The INFJ mind is wired for subtlety, for context, for hidden meaning. They don't rush to respond. They let conversations unfold, tracking tone, body language, emotional energy. And then, when the moment is right, they speak, with clarity, precision, and impact. This silent intelligence isn't about manipulation or dominance. It's about respect, for others and for their own inner clarity. INFJs believe that not everything needs to be said. Some truths are stronger in restraint. Their silence gives them space to analyze, connect dots, and anticipate, all before anyone else has even started processing. In this video, we'll explore 9 ways INFJs quietly outthink everyone else without needing to fill the room with words. These are not tricks. They're natural strengths rooted in deep perception and emotional wisdom. When you see how they do it, you'll understand why INFJs often leave others thinking, "I didn't know how much I needed to hear until they spoke." Let's begin with the first way silence becomes their superpower. Thing number 1. Observational listening. INFJs don't just hear words, they listen. That listening is active, intentional, and deeply perceptive. While others speak to be heard, INFJs speak to matter. Until they have something that moves the conversation forward, they stay silent and attentive. Their listening isn't passive. They track tone, body language, breath, micro-expressions. They hear the hesitations and see the shifting weight in a posture. They tune into emotional undercurrents, like anxiety hidden beneath a laughter or tension masked with politeness. This form of observational listening gives the INFJ a private advantage. They collect context, emotion, and detail piece by piece. By the time they decide to speak, they've built a clear understanding of what's really happening, far deeper than surface words alone. This doesn't mean they judge. Instead, it means they value depth. They understand that meaning lies beneath the noise. So they hold their tongue, absorb the moment, and wait until they can contribute something meaningful. When an INFJ does decide to speak, it often comes as a quiet revelation. Their timing is precise. They speak exactly when the conversation benefits most, offering clarity that shifts perspective. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's strategy. Others may see it as calm. But for the INFJ, it's purposeful, a way to think deeper, connect more fully, and share exactly when it matters most. Thing number 2, internal pattern detection. What an INFJ hears isn't just words, it's patterns. While everyone else talks, INFJs are mapping connections between statements, behaviors, and emotional shifts. Their minds are like radar, tracking irregularities that hint at larger trends below the surface. They hear how someone said something last week and how it differs this week. They note how someone's tone reads when a particular topic comes up. They see when someone breaks eye contact at a key moment. It may appear invisible to others, but INFJs notice, and they store these observations as data points. This internal pattern detection happens in real time. When people chase small arguments, INFJs follow the emotional theme behind the words. They connect dots between what someone says and how they react emotionally. Over time, these dots form a clear picture. A person who always deflects when challenged. A shift in tone whenever a certain topic appears. An undercurrent of avoidance when dealing with conflict. To the INFJ, these patterns tell a story, and that story often explains what no one else understands. INFJs rarely share this insight immediately. They want to be sure. They want to test the pattern over time. Then, when they're confident, they speak up, not to accuse, but to clarify. Their revelation is usually so consistent, people often stop and realize, yes, you're right, I didn't notice that myself. Their minds are working behind the scenes. While others talk, INFJs quietly piece together the puzzle. And then they speak with insight that feels both surprising and inevitable. Thing number 3. Strategic thought before speech. INFJs are not impulsive. Their talk is chosen. Their speech is sculpted. They think ahead. What will this achieve? Who needs this now? How might it land? They consider tone, timing, context, and impact. Every statement is a decision. INFJs mentally test words before they speak. This means their communication is layered. It carries clarity and emotional awareness. They think about how someone will hear it, not just what they mean. That strategic speech affects how others respond. When many conversations drift, INFJs' words guide. Their statements don't push harder. They resonate deeper. They address the root, not the surface. And if someone tries to rush them or provoke them into reacting, INFJs use strategic silence. They pause. They regroup. They choose words that serve purpose, not words that feed drama. Their calmness becomes its own voice, and often it speaks louder than words could. Their speech isn't just smart, it's timely. It arrives when someone needs to hear it, and only for as long as it matters. And when it's done, they return to silence, letting the words settle and work their magic. Way number 4, emotional calibration. INFJs don't just listen to what's said, they gauge how it's said. This isn't guessing. It's emotional calibration, sensing the mood in the room, the energy of a person, and adjusting accordingly, all while staying quiet. They feel the emotional temperature. If tension is rising, they hold back. If someone needs reassurance, their presence provides calm. This is done without words, through posture, facial expression, and tone when they finally speak. For example, in a heated discussion, the INFJ might simply breathe deeply, steady the tone of their voice, and ask one well-timed question that shifts everyone back to logic. No drama. No escalation. Just emotional recalibration. This skill comes from years of observing emotional patterns. The INFJ notices what happens when someone gets defensive or shuts down, and they adapt. They know that emotional response is often the real message, and they address that first, sometimes without speaking at all. When someone finally asks, "Why did you say that now?" the INFJ may explain calmly, "I paused because I sensed the energy shifting. I wanted to hold space until things were clear." Their timing and calibration make their words land. They don't just speak, they create the conditions for understanding. And then they speak again. This approach leaves others speechless because the INFJ's presence feels like peace amid chaos. Words matter, but timing and tone matter more. When INFJs speak, it's often because they've already made the moment right for it. Way number 5. Predictive intuition. INFJs don't just sense patterns, they anticipate outcomes. They have predictive intuition, a deep sense of what will come next. Their silence gives them space to connect dots and imagine scenarios before others even arrive there. They're listening to tone. They're noticing who's quiet. And they're building a private forecast. What's going to happen if this path continues? They foresee conflict, miscommunication, or emotional shift, and they prepare for it while others are still caught up in the present. This is why INFJs can prevent crises before they happen. They might start a one-on-one conversation, delaying a fight, or offer reassurance in advance. Or say, "I sense we're heading toward misunderstanding. Can we pause?" Their words aren't triggered by emotion. They're preemptive interventions. This kind of speech often shifts events before they escalate. It surprises people because it isn't reactive. it's proactive. INFJs often know what questions will come next in a discussion or what assumptions might derail a plan. They hold silence until they've mentally tested outcomes, and then they speak with foresight. And when they do, others are often surprised at how it fits. This quiet predictive power is not magic, it's observation, and pattern and intuition combined. But it sounds like magic in action. Outcome. People remember not just what was said, but that it should have been said sooner. Way number 6, quiet emotional influence. Even when INFJs don't speak, their presence influences the emotional tone of a room. Their calm, thoughtful energy is infectious, and others often mirror it, even without realizing. They don't have to fix tension or pose solutions. Their stillness and focus often pull chaotic energy back toward balance. People start matching their calm without words. This happens in meetings, family dinners, late-night heart-to-hearts. The INFJ sits quietly, listening. Over time, others relax. Emotions shift. Conversation aligns. And that realignment began with silence, not speech. This kind of emotional influence is powerful. It shows that sometimes the best way to outthink is to outcalm. And others pick up on that. They start behaving differently, soothing themselves, correcting tone, speaking slower. INFJs don't use this to control. They use it to support emotional well-being, often unknowingly. They care deeply about harmony, so their silence becomes a kind of guidepost. That subtle guidance is more effective than any audible advice. What leaves people speechless isn't just the words INFJs finally say, it's the way things shift before the words even arrive. The room feels different. The conversation changes direction. The silence did that. That's why their intelligence isn't just in what they say, but what they don't say, and how their silence creates space for understanding. Way number 7, emotional memory storage. INFJs remember how things feel. While most people remember facts or dates, INFJs remember emotional moments. That memory becomes a long-term resource, helping them navigate situations with more awareness than others expect. They recall how someone reacted under pressure, what triggered silence in a friend, or how a group shifted energy after a specific comment. These aren't random memories, they're patterns stored for later use. When something happens again, INFJs quietly compare it to past emotional cues. He got defensive in the same way 6 months ago. Or, she used humor this exact way when she felt unseen last time. This emotional memory gives INFJs a sharper sense of emotional dynamics. They can step into a conversation already knowing how to support someone, how to phrase something, or when to hold back. People often say, "You remember things I forgot," not realizing it wasn't the words, but the feeling the INFJ logged. This is how they outthink through silence. They come prepared, emotionally equipped, and often one step ahead. Way number 8. Slow-burning insight. INFJs don't always need to solve things in the moment. They let insight rise over time. This slow-burning thought process means they may stay quiet during a conversation, only to return hours, days, or even weeks later with deep clarity. People assume they've moved on, but the INFJ mind is still working. Behind the scenes, thoughts are taking shape. And when they return, their comment is sharp, timely, and often hits deeper than anything said during the original moment. This delayed insight is part of what makes them hard to match intellectually. They aren't rushing. They're incubating ideas, processing at a depth most don't reach. They may go quiet after a meeting, only to send a message later that reframes the whole issue. Or revisit a conversation to say, "I've thought about this more," followed by something that makes everyone pause. This patient reflection often leaves others wondering, "How did you think of that?" The answer? Silence. Time. Depth. Way number 9. mental parallel processing. Even when INFJs are engaged in conversation, another track is running in their minds. They're hearing, feeling, remembering, and evaluating all at once. It's not distraction, it's dual awareness. This parallel processing allows them to stay present while also analyzing future possibilities, internal reactions, and group dynamics, all without needing to talk it out. Someone may say, "You're being quiet," not realizing the INFJ is mentally juggling 4 levels of perception. They're decoding motives, predicting next moves, and checking how everything feels. This makes their eventual comments layered. Not just what's happening, but why it matters, how it affects others, and what should be done next. It also means their silence isn't passive. It's active engagement through inner complexity. While others follow the conversation, INFJs are mapping the terrain. And when they choose to speak, they drop an insight that comes from not just listening, but thinking in multiple layers at once. When you look at how INFJs outthink others, it's not about loudness. It's not about volume or speed. It's about silence that senses, speaks, and shifts the room. They listen with purpose. They detect patterns others miss. They strategize before they speak. They sense emotional weather. They predict ahead. And they guide with quiet influence. That kind of intelligence isn't obvious at first. It unfolds. Slowly. Carefully. By the time INFJs speak, what they say feels meaningful, and the silence that came before feels intentional. If you're an INFJ, know this: your quiet mind doesn't need an audience. It needs a moment. And when you take that moment, your voice doesn't just speak, it lands. If you've experienced this in someone else, felt the calm that spoke louder than any words, share what it felt like. And if you're discovering this in yourself, remember, your silence is strength. Thank you for watching. Let your insight be your guide, and your silence your power.